The Minoan civilization thrived on the island of Crete over 3,000 years ago, surrounded by the unpredictable forces of nature. Volcanoes rumbled, the earth shook, and tsunamis threatened their shores. Yet they not only survived, they flourished. How did they do it without satellites, weather apps, or reinforced buildings? Ancient people relied on something far more profound: their ingenuity, intuition, and a deep understanding of the world around them. Today, as we face rising natural disasters and seek sustainable solutions, their methods hold timeless lessons. What can we learn from their ability to adapt and endure? In this video, we'll uncover the fascinating strategies ancient civilizations used to survive without modern technology, starting with the power of observation and intuition that guided their every move. Imagine standing in the middle of a dense forest or along a quiet shoreline thousands of years ago. No weather forecasts, no emergency alerts, just you and the natural world. Ancient people didn't have the luxury of technology to warn them about impending disasters, but they had something just as powerful: an intimate connection to their environment. They became masters of observation, noticing subtle shifts in nature that often signaled danger long before it arrived. One of the most fascinating ways they did this was by watching animal behavior. Birds suddenly flying inland, fish darting erratically, or livestock acting unusually restless. These weren't random occurrences. They were nature's early warning system. For instance, in ancient China, farmers noticed that well water levels would rise or fall mysteriously before an earthquake struck. They didn't know the science behind it at the time, but they trusted these signs enough to act. Today, we understand that animals can sense seismic waves or changes in atmospheric pressure long before humans can. Birds, for example, detect shifts in air currents, while fish are sensitive to vibrations in water caused by tectonic activity. These observations weren't just casual notes, they were life-saving knowledge passed down through generations. But it wasn't just about practical survival. These observations often intertwined with spiritual beliefs, creating a rich tapestry of folklore and tradition. People saw nature's warnings as messages from the gods or spirits, guiding them to safety. This blend of practicality and spirituality allowed ancient communities to not only survive, but also to build a deep respect for the world around them. As we move forward, it's worth considering how these ancient practices influenced the way societies developed their spiritual and cultural frameworks, turning survival strategies into enduring traditions. For ancient civilizations, the natural world wasn't just a physical space, it was alive with divine forces. When disasters struck, they didn't see random chaos, they saw the will of gods or spirits demanding attention. This belief wasn't just a way to make sense of the unknown, it became a survival strategy. By attributing natural disasters to deities, cultures developed rituals and practices to appease these powerful beings, ensuring their favor and protection. Take the Aztecs, for example. They believed earthquakes were the work of Tlaloc, the god of rain and storms. When the ground shook, it wasn't just a geological event, it was Tlaloc's anger. To calm him, they performed elaborate ceremonies, offering sacrifices and prayers. These rituals weren't just acts of faith, they were acts of community resilience, bringing people together to face a shared threat. The Greeks, too, saw the hand of the divine in their disasters. Poseidon, the god of the sea, was said to cause tsunamis and storms when angered. To avoid his wrath, sailors and coastal communities built temples in his honor and sought guidance from oracles. These spiritual leaders, shamans, priests, and seers were seen as bridges between the human and divine worlds. They interpreted signs from the gods, offering advice on when to plant crops, when to move to higher ground, or when to prepare for disaster. Their role was crucial, not just as spiritual guides, but as practical advisors who shaped the decisions of entire communities. These mythological beliefs did more than explain the unexplainable, they fostered unity. When a community believed they were facing the wrath of a god, they came together to perform rituals, share resources, and protect one another. Even if the science behind their beliefs wasn't accurate, the sense of collective purpose they created was real. It prepared them mentally and emotionally for the challenges ahead, turning fear into action. But spirituality wasn't the only tool in their arsenal. Alongside these rituals, ancient cultures developed practical measures to mitigate disaster. They built structures designed to withstand tremors, stored food and water in secure locations, and created systems for sharing warnings. The combination of faith and practicality gave them a dual approach to survival, one that balanced the seen and the unseen, the physical and the spiritual. As we explore these ancient strategies, it's clear that their spiritual practices were more than just superstitions. They were a way of understanding their world, fostering resilience, and preparing for the unknown. And while we may not worship the same gods today, the lessons they offer about community, preparedness, and adaptability remain as relevant as ever. Ancient civilizations didn't just rely on intuition or spirituality to survive natural disasters. They also engineered their surroundings to endure them. One of the most remarkable ways they did this was through architectural innovation. These societies understood that the way they built their homes, temples, and cities could mean the difference between life and death when disaster struck. And their solutions were nothing short of genius. Take the Inca, for example. In the rugged Andes Mountains, where earthquakes were a constant threat, they developed a construction technique that still baffles engineers today. They used massive, irregularly shaped stones, carefully carved to fit together like a puzzle without any mortar. These interlocking blocks allowed their structures to sway and shift during tremors, absorbing the energy of the quakes instead of collapsing. The precision of their stonework was so advanced that you couldn't even slide a piece of paper between the stones. It's no wonder that many Inca buildings still stand strong centuries later, even as modern structures crumble around them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the Romans were tackling a different kind of challenge: floods and landslides. Their solution: aqueducts and roads designed to withstand the elements. Roman engineers built aqueducts with arches that distributed weight evenly, making them resistant to both the force of rushing water and the shifting ground beneath. Their roads, layered with gravel, sand, and stone, were designed to drain water quickly, preventing erosion and ensuring they remained passable even after heavy rains. These weren't just feats of engineering. They were lifelines that kept cities connected and functioning during times of crisis. In Southeast Asia, communities turned to nature itself for inspiration. Bamboo, a material that's lightweight yet incredibly strong, became the backbone of their disaster-resistant architecture. Its natural flexibility allowed structures to bend and sway during storms rather than break. Entire homes, bridges, and even community halls were built using bamboo, creating spaces that could withstand the region's frequent typhoons and monsoons. What's more, bamboo grows quickly and abundantly, making it a sustainable choice that ancient builders could rely on generation after generation. These architectural marvels weren't just standalone structures, they were part of a larger vision of urban planning. Ancient cities were often designed with disaster resilience in mind. Streets were laid out to allow for easy evacuation, and buildings were strategically placed to minimize damage from flooding or landslides. For example, many Mesoamerican cities, like those of the Maya, were built on elevated platforms to protect against flooding, while their central plazas served as gathering points in times of crisis. The ingenuity of these ancient builders reminds us that resilience isn't just about reacting to disasters. It's about anticipating them and designing solutions that stand the test of time. As we look to the future, their approach offers a powerful lesson. By working with nature rather than against it, we can create structures and systems that not only endure but thrive in the face of adversity. But architecture was just one piece of the puzzle. Beyond the physical structures, ancient civilizations also developed intricate systems for managing resources and warning their communities' systems that were as innovative as they were effective. Ancient civilizations didn't just build their cities haphazardly. They thought strategically, carefully selecting locations that offered both natural defenses and vital resources. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about survival. By understanding their environment and planning accordingly, they created settlements that could withstand the challenges of their time. Take the ancient Egyptians, for example. The Nile River was the lifeblood of their civilization, providing water, fertile soil, and transportation. But it was also unpredictable, with annual floods that could devastate unprepared communities. To mitigate this, the Egyptians built their cities slightly away from the river's floodplains, ensuring they were close enough to benefit from its resources but far enough to avoid its destructive power. They also developed an intricate irrigation system to manage water flow, turning potential disasters into opportunities for agriculture. This balance between proximity and protection allowed them to thrive for millennia. Meanwhile, in Mesopotamia, often called the cradle of civilization, people faced a different set of challenges. Living between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, they dealt with frequent flooding that could wipe out entire settlements. Their solution: elevated platforms. By building their cities on raised mounds or artificial hills, they created a buffer against the rising waters. These platforms weren't just practical, they were symbolic, representing humanity's triumph over nature's unpredictability. Over time, this technique evolved into the iconic ziggurats, towering structures that served both as temples and as safe havens during floods. In the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya took urban planning to another level. They didn't just adapt to their environment, they integrated it into their cities. Recognizing the importance of water in a region prone to droughts, they built their settlements around natural sinkholes called cenotes. These underground reservoirs provided a reliable source of water during dry seasons, ensuring their survival in an otherwise harsh landscape. The Maya also designed their cities to align with celestial events, creating a harmonious relationship between their architecture and the natural world. Their ability to blend practicality with spirituality allowed them to flourish in a challenging environment. These examples show that ancient urban planning wasn't just about choosing the right location. It was about creating systems that worked in harmony with nature. Whether it was the Egyptians' careful placement along the Nile, the Mesopotamians' elevated platforms, or the Mayas' use of cenotes, these civilizations understood that survival depended on foresight and adaptability. But even the best-laid plans required something more: the strength of community. When disasters struck, it wasn't just individual ingenuity that saved lives, it was collective action. People came together to rebuild, to share resources, and to support one another. This spirit of cooperation was the glue that held societies together, turning isolated efforts into powerful, unified responses. And as we'll see next, this sense of community was perhaps the most vital strategy of all. In the face of natural disasters, ancient civilizations understood that survival wasn't a solo endeavor, it was a collective effort. Communities worked together, pooling their knowledge, skills, and resources to overcome challenges that no individual could face alone. This spirit of cooperation wasn't just an act of kindness, it was a necessity, and it became the backbone of their resilience. Take the Native American tribes, for example. During harsh winters or prolonged droughts, they relied on a system of shared resources to ensure everyone had enough to survive. Hunting grounds, fishing spots, and foraging areas weren't owned by individuals but were treated as communal spaces. If one family struggled, others would step in to help, creating a network of support that strengthened the entire tribe. This wasn't just about survival, it was about maintaining the social fabric that held their communities together. But cooperation went beyond sharing resources. When disaster struck, entire villages would mobilize to build shelters, store food, or evacuate to safer areas. In ancient Mesopotamia, for instance, communities worked together to construct massive granaries where surplus crops were stored. These granaries weren't just for individual families, they were a shared safety net, ensuring that everyone had access to food during lean times. Similarly, in the Andes, the Inca organized large-scale labor projects to build terraces and irrigation systems, transforming steep, inhospitable mountains into fertile farmland that could feed thousands. Oral traditions played a crucial role in preserving this collective wisdom. Without written records, ancient people relied on storytelling to pass down survival knowledge from one generation to the next. Elders shared lessons about which plants were safe to eat, how to predict weather patterns, and where to find water during droughts. These stories weren't just practical guides, they were cultural treasures woven into the fabric of their identity. For example, the Aboriginal people of Australia used Dreamtime stories to teach younger generations about navigating the land, finding water in arid regions, and understanding the signs of approaching storms. This reliance on shared knowledge and collective action highlights something profound. Ancient survival wasn't just about physical resilience, it was about social resilience. Communities that worked together, trusted one another, and valued their collective wisdom were better equipped to face the uncertainties of their world. As we explore these ancient strategies, it's impossible not to notice how much they relied on preparation. Storing food, preserving water, and creating systems for resource management were essential to their survival. And this leads us to another fascinating aspect of their ingenuity: how they stored and preserved resources for emergencies, ensuring they were ready when disaster struck. When disaster loomed, ancient civilizations didn't just rely on quick thinking, they prepared. One of their most critical survival strategies was mastering the art of storing food and water. In a world without refrigeration or modern infrastructure, they developed ingenious methods to preserve essential resources, ensuring their communities could endure even the harshest conditions. In ancient Egypt, granaries became the lifeline of society. These massive storage facilities, often built near temples or administrative centers, were designed to hold surplus grain harvested during plentiful years. The grain was carefully dried and sealed in large jars or stored in elevated structures to protect it from pests and moisture. This foresight allowed the Egyptians to weather droughts and famines, turning what could have been a crisis into a manageable challenge. Similarly, in Mesopotamia, granaries were not just storage spaces but symbols of stability. Built with thick mud brick walls and elevated platforms, they kept grain safe from floods and rodents. During times of scarcity, these reserves were distributed to the community, ensuring no one went hungry. The Inca, living in the rugged Andes, faced a different set of challenges. Their solution, Colca's storage houses strategically placed across their empire. These structures were marvels of engineering, built on hillsides to take advantage of cooler temperatures and natural airflow. The Colcas preserved everything from maize to potatoes, keeping them fresh for months or even years. Some were even designed to store perishables like meat and fish, using a combination of freezing high-altitude air and natural dehydration techniques. This network of storage facilities allowed the Inca to support their vast population, even in the most remote areas. Water, of course, was just as vital as food. In arid regions like India, communities built stepwells, intricate structures that combined architecture with water management. These wells, often descending several stories underground, were designed to collect and store rainwater during the monsoon season. The steps not only provided access to water but also helped keep it cool and prevent evaporation. Step wells became gathering places where people could draw water, socialize, and even escape the heat. They were a testament to the ingenuity of ancient engineers who turned a basic necessity into a work of art. These storage techniques weren't just about survival, they were about foresight. Ancient civilizations understood that preparation was the key to resilience. By storing food and water, they created a buffer against the unpredictability of nature, ensuring their communities could endure even the most challenging times. But survival wasn't just about what they stored, it was also about how they adapted to the environments around them. Moving from the strategies of storage, we see how ancient people thrived in some of the most extreme climates on Earth, turning adversity into opportunity. From the icy tundras of the Arctic to the scorching sands of the desert, ancient civilizations didn't just endure extreme climates, they mastered them. Their ability to adapt to some of the harshest environments on Earth is a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. Take the Inuit, for example. Living in the Arctic, where temperatures could plunge to -50 degrees Celsius, they developed a remarkable solution to survive the brutal winters, the igloo. These dome-shaped structures, built from blocks of compacted snow, weren't just temporary shelters, they were engineering marvels. The snow's insulating properties trapped body heat inside, creating a surprisingly warm interior even as the outside world froze. But the igloo was only one part of their survival toolkit. The Inuit also crafted clothing from animal hides and fur, designed to trap warmth and repel moisture. Layered garments like parkas and boots lined with caribou fur allowed them to move freely while staying protected from the biting cold. Their clothing wasn't just functional, it was a masterpiece of design tailored to their environment with precision and care. On the other side of the temperature spectrum, the Bedouins of the Arabian desert faced an entirely different challenge: relentless heat and arid conditions. Their solution, the black goat hair tent known as the Beit al-Shah. These tents were more than just portable homes, they were a lifeline in the desert. The tightly woven fabric provided shade during the day, blocking the sun's harsh rays while allowing cool breezes to flow through at night. The tents could be quickly dismantled and moved, enabling the Bedouins to follow seasonal water sources and grazing land. Like the Inuit, their clothing was equally ingenious. Loose, flowing robes made from lightweight fabrics protected them from the sun while allowing air to circulate, keeping their bodies cool in the searing heat. Both the Inuit and the Bedouins understood something profound. Survival in extreme climates wasn't just about enduring the elements, it was about working with them. They didn't fight nature, they adapted to it, using the resources available in their environment to create solutions that were both practical and sustainable. But their ingenuity didn't stop at clothing and shelter. These ancient cultures also harnessed natural resources in ways that transformed their environments into sources of life. For the Inuit, ice wasn't just a barrier, it was a resource. They carved it into tools, used it to preserve food, and even melted it for drinking water. The Bedouins, meanwhile, relied on the sparse vegetation of the desert to feed their livestock and craft essential items. Their ability to see potential in what others might consider barren landscapes speaks volumes about their resourcefulness. As we delve deeper into their strategies, it becomes clear that ancient people didn't just survive extreme climates, they thrived in them. By understanding their surroundings and using them to their advantage, they turned adversity into opportunity. And this leads us to the next chapter of their survival story: how they harnessed the natural world to create tools, medicines, and systems that sustained their communities for generations. Ancient civilizations didn't just survive, they thrived by turning the natural world into a toolkit for resilience. One of their most remarkable strategies was harnessing the resources around them, transforming everyday elements into lifelines during times of crisis. From the vast Pacific Ocean to the icy fjords of Scandinavia, people found ingenious ways to make the most of what nature provided. Take the Polynesians, for example. Living on remote islands surrounded by endless ocean, they relied heavily on the coconut palm, a tree so versatile it was often called the tree of life. Every part of the palm had a purpose. The fruit provided food and water, while the husks were used to make ropes and mats. The leaves became thatch for roofs, offering shelter from storms, and the trunks were carved into canoes, essential for fishing and travel. When cyclones or tsunamis struck, these resources became vital for survival. Coconut palms weren't just plants. They were the backbone of Polynesian resilience, ensuring communities had what they needed to endure. Meanwhile, in the frigid north, the Vikings faced a different kind of challenge, surviving long, harsh winters. Their solution lay in the peat bogs that dotted their landscape. Peat, a dense, organic material formed from decaying plants, became their primary source of fuel. Dug from the ground and dried, it burned slowly and steadily, providing warmth and light during the darkest months. This simple yet effective resource allowed the Vikings to cook meals, heat their homes, and even forge tools, turning the cold into something manageable. Peat wasn't just a fuel, it was a lifeline that kept their communities alive through the harshest seasons. Fire, too, played a central role in survival across countless cultures. Beyond its obvious uses for warmth and cooking, fire became a critical tool in emergencies. Ancient people used it to signal for help, creating smoke columns visible from miles away. It also served as a deterrent, keeping predators at bay and providing a sense of security in the wilderness. In the hands of skilled survivors, fire was more than a tool. It was a symbol of hope, a way to transform fear into action. This ability to harness natural resources wasn't just about practicality. It was about adaptability. Ancient civilizations understood that survival meant working with the environment, not against it. They didn't waste what they had, they maximized it, finding innovative uses for even the most ordinary materials. But sometimes staying in one place wasn't enough. When resources dwindled or disasters made an area uninhabitable, ancient people turned to another strategy: migration. This wasn't just about moving, it was about seeking new opportunities, finding safer ground, and starting anew. And as we'll see next, this ability to adapt and relocate became one of the most powerful survival tools of all. When disasters struck or resources grew scarce, ancient civilizations didn't hesitate to move. Migration and nomadic lifestyles were more than just survival tactics. They were deeply ingrained ways of life that allowed people to adapt to the ever-changing rhythms of nature. For some cultures, staying in one place wasn't an option. Their survival depended on their ability to roam, to follow the seasons, and to seek out new opportunities wherever they could be found. Take the Mongols, for instance. Living on the vast, unforgiving steppes of Central Asia, they faced extreme weather conditions that could devastate their herds of sheep, goats, and horses. Droughts, harsh winters, and sudden storms made it impossible to settle permanently. Instead, the Mongols became masters of mobility. They lived in portable felt tents called yurts, which could be dismantled and moved within hours. Their entire lives revolved around the needs of their herds as they migrated across the grasslands in search of fresh pastures. This nomadic lifestyle wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity, allowing them to thrive in an environment that might have defeated less adaptable people. On the other side of the world, the San people of the Kalahari Desert developed a similar strategy, but with a unique twist. Living in one of the driest regions on Earth, they relied on an intimate knowledge of their environment to survive. The San followed seasonal patterns, moving to areas where water and food were most abundant. During the rainy season, they gathered near natural waterholes, hunting game and foraging for wild plants. When the dry season arrived, they dispersed into smaller groups, relying on hidden water sources and their ability to track animals over vast distances. Their movements weren't random, they were guided by generations of accumulated wisdom, passed down through stories and oral traditions. Migration wasn't just about physical survival, it was also a way of preserving culture and knowledge. As nomadic groups moved, they carried their traditions with them, adapting to new environments while maintaining their identity. The stories they told of past migrations, survival strategies, and encounters with the natural world became a living archive of their history. These tales weren't just entertainment, they were survival manuals, teaching each new generation how to navigate the challenges of their world. This connection between movement and storytelling brings us to an essential aspect of ancient resilience, the power of narrative. Stories weren't just a way to pass the time, they were tools for preparation, warning, and education. Through tales of past disasters, triumphs, and lessons learned, ancient people created a shared understanding of how to face the unknown. And as we explore this next chapter, we'll see how storytelling became one of the most powerful tools in their survival toolkit, a way to prepare for disasters long before they struck, ensuring that knowledge endured even when the world around them changed. Long before the written word, ancient cultures relied on something far more powerful: stories. These weren't just tales to entertain, they were survival guides passed down through generations, filled with lessons about nature, disasters, and resilience. Among the most profound examples of this are the Dreamtime stories of Aboriginal Australians. These narratives, rooted in the spiritual and cultural fabric of their society, served a dual purpose. On one hand, they explained the origins of the world and its natural phenomena. On the other, they provided practical knowledge about survival in a harsh and unpredictable environment. For instance, Dreamtime stories often detailed the behaviors of animals, the patterns of the seasons, and the locations of vital water sources. By weaving these lessons into their mythology, Aboriginal Australians ensured that critical survival skills were not only remembered but also deeply respected. Across the globe, another ancient culture used storytelling to preserve vital knowledge: the Mesopotamians. Their Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known pieces of literature, is more than just a tale of heroism and friendship. Embedded within its verses are lessons about floods and human resilience. The story of Utnapishtim, who builds a giant ark to survive a catastrophic flood, mirrors real-life experiences of Mesopotamian communities living between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These rivers, while life-giving, were prone to devastating floods. The Epic of Gilgamesh served as both a cautionary tale and a guide, teaching future generations how to prepare for and recover from such disasters. Through poetry and myth, they transformed fear into wisdom, ensuring their survival knowledge endured for millennia. But storytelling wasn't just about preserving knowledge, it was about building identity and community. In times of crisis, these stories became a source of strength, reminding people of their shared history and collective ability to overcome adversity. They weren't just recounting the past, they were preparing for the future. And as we'll see next, this same ingenuity extended beyond stories into the realm of early technology, where ancient people began to harness the power of tools and innovation to further their survival. Ancient civilizations didn't just rely on observation, spirituality, or storytelling, they also harnessed the power of innovation. When faced with the destructive forces of nature, they didn't stand by idly. They created tools and systems to mitigate disaster impact. One of the earliest examples of this ingenuity can be found in Mesopotamia, where the unpredictable flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers posed a constant threat. To manage this, they developed sophisticated irrigation systems that transformed chaos into control. Canals, levees, and reservoirs were carefully constructed to redirect floodwaters, protecting crops and settlements while ensuring a steady water supply during dry seasons. This wasn't just about survival, it was about mastery over their environment, turning a potential disaster into a source of life. Meanwhile, in ancient China, another groundbreaking innovation was taking shape: the seismoscope. Invented by Zhang Heng during the Han Dynasty, this remarkable device was designed to detect earthquakes from hundreds of miles away. The seismoscope, shaped like a bronze urn, featured 8 dragon heads pointing in different directions, each holding a ball in its mouth. When an earthquake occurred, the vibrations would cause one of the dragons to release its ball into the mouth of a waiting toad below, indicating the direction of the quake. While the exact mechanics remain a mystery, this early warning system showcased the Chinese understanding of seismic activity and their commitment to protecting their people. It was a blend of art and science, a testament to their ability to innovate in the face of disaster. In Persia, where scorching heat waves could make life unbearable, ancient engineers turned to nature for inspiration. They designed wind catchers, towering structures that captured cool breezes and funneled them into buildings below. These ingenious devices, often paired with underground qanats, a network of tunnels that brought water from distant sources, created a natural cooling system that kept homes and public spaces comfortable even during the hottest months. The wind catchers weren't just practical, they were a perfect example of working with the environment rather than against it, using the power of the wind to combat the relentless heat. These early technological innovations reveal a common thread. Ancient people didn't just react to disasters, they anticipated them. They used their knowledge of the natural world to create tools and systems that reduced their vulnerability, turning challenges into opportunities for growth. And as we look at their strategies, it's impossible not to marvel at their ability to adapt to even the most extreme conditions. But perhaps one of the most awe-inspiring examples of ancient innovation lies in how they dealt with volcanic activity. For civilizations living in the shadow of active volcanoes, survival meant not only understanding the dangers but also finding ways to coexist with them. This brings us to the next chapter of their story, how they turned the destructive power of volcanoes into a source of life and prosperity. Living near an active volcano might seem like a recipe for disaster, but for ancient civilizations it became an opportunity to thrive. Volcanoes, with their destructive eruptions and unpredictable tremors, were both a threat and a gift. The people who called these fiery landscapes home didn't just survive, they found ways to harness the power of the earth itself. Take Pompeii, for example. Nestled in the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, this Roman city was no stranger to volcanic activity. Long before the catastrophic eruption in 79 AD, the people of Pompeii had learned to live with the constant threat of earthquakes. They built their homes and public buildings with this in mind, using flexible materials like wood and lightweight stone that could sway and bend during tremors. Even their city layout was designed with resilience in mind, with wide streets and open spaces that allowed for quick evacuation if needed. While the eruption ultimately overwhelmed them, their architectural ingenuity speaks volumes about their ability to adapt to the dangers of living near a volcano. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the Hawaiians were turning volcanic soil into an agricultural goldmine. The same lava flows that destroyed everything in their path also left behind rich, fertile soil packed with minerals. Ancient Hawaiians recognized this potential, cultivating crops like taro, sweet potatoes, and breadfruit in the nutrient-dense earth. They developed intricate irrigation systems to channel water from the mountains to their fields, ensuring their crops thrived even in the shadow of active volcanoes. This wasn't just farming, it was a harmonious relationship with the land where destruction and renewal went hand in hand. But living with volcanoes wasn't just about adapting to their immediate dangers. It was also about understanding their rhythms and patterns. In places like Indonesia, communities developed rituals and traditions to honor the spirits believed to reside within the volcanoes. These practices weren't just spiritual, they were practical. By paying close attention to subtle changes in the environment, such as shifts in animal behavior or unusual gas emissions, they could often predict eruptions and evacuate in time. This blend of practicality and respect for nature allowed ancient civilizations to not only survive but also flourish in some of the most volatile environments on Earth. And as we move from the fiery landscapes of volcanoes to the parched earth of drought-stricken regions, we'll see how ancient people turned scarcity into abundance, using their ingenuity to overcome one of nature's most relentless challenges. Water is life, a truth ancient civilizations in arid regions understood all too well. In places where rain was scarce and droughts could last for years, survival depended on one thing: conserving every precious drop. Across the globe, cultures developed ingenious methods to capture, store, and manage water, turning barren landscapes into thriving communities. Take the Nabateans, for instance. In the heart of the Arabian desert, where rainfall was sporadic and unpredictable, they built an elaborate system of cisterns and channels to collect and store rainwater. These weren't just simple containers, they were masterpieces of engineering, carved into rock and designed to capture every drop that fell during rare rainstorms. The Nabateans also constructed intricate networks of channels or aqueducts to redirect water from distant sources into their cities. Petra, their most famous settlement, is a testament to their ingenuity. Hidden within its towering cliffs are countless cisterns and reservoirs, ensuring the city had enough water to sustain its population even during prolonged dry spells. Their ability to harness such a scarce resource transformed the desert into a place of prosperity. Meanwhile, in the American Southwest, the Anasazi faced similar challenges. Living in the arid landscapes of present-day Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, they developed their own water conservation strategies. One of their most remarkable innovations was storing water in cliff dwellings. These structures, built into the sides of steep canyons, were more than just homes, they were water management systems. The Anasazi collected rainwater from the cliff tops, channeling it through natural crevices into cisterns carved into the rock. These reservoirs kept the water cool and protected from evaporation, ensuring a reliable supply even during the hottest months. Their cliff dwellings weren't just shelters, they were lifelines perfectly adapted to the rhythms of their environment. But droughts weren't the only water-related challenges ancient people faced. In regions where water was scarce one moment and abundant the next, they also had to prepare for floods, a force as destructive as it was life-giving. And as we'll see next, their strategies for managing floods were just as innovative, turning potential disasters into opportunities for growth and renewal. Floods have always been one of nature's most destructive forces, capable of wiping out entire communities in moments. But for ancient civilizations living in flood-prone areas, survival meant more than just enduring these disasters, it meant finding ways to control them. Across the globe, cultures developed ingenious flood management systems that not only protected their settlements, but also turned the destructive power of water into a source of life and prosperity. The ancient Egyptians, living along the fertile but unpredictable Nile River, were among the first to master this balance. They didn't just fear the annual floods, they depended on them. The Nile's inundation brought nutrient-rich silt to their fields, ensuring bountiful harvests, but too much water could be just as devastating as too little. To manage this delicate balance, the Egyptians created nilometers, remarkable structures designed to measure the river's flood levels. These were often staircases or wells built along the riverbanks, marked with measurements that indicated whether the floodwaters were too high, too low, or just right. By tracking these levels, they could predict the impact of the floods and prepare accordingly. If the waters were too high, they reinforced their dikes and stored excess water in reservoirs. If the levels were too low, they conserved water and rationed resources. The Nilometer wasn't just a tool, it was a symbol of their deep understanding of the river's rhythms and their ability to work with nature rather than against it. Halfway across the world, the Chinese faced a similar challenge with the unpredictable Yellow River, often called China's Sorrow for its devastating floods. To tame this mighty river, they developed an extensive system of dikes and canals. These weren't just simple barriers, they were feats of engineering, carefully designed to redirect floodwaters away from populated areas and into irrigation channels. One of the most famous examples is the Duzhongyan irrigation system, built over 2,000 years ago. This network of canals and dams not only prevented flooding but also ensured a steady supply of water for agriculture, transforming the region into one of the most productive in ancient China. The system is still in use today, a testament to the ingenuity of its creators. What's striking about these flood control systems is how they reflect a broader philosophy. Ancient civilizations didn't just react to disasters, they anticipated them. By understanding the patterns of their environment and developing tools to manage them, they turned potential catastrophes into opportunities for growth. The Egyptians and the Chinese didn't just survive floods, they thrived because of them. But floods weren't the only natural disasters these ancient cultures faced. In regions where the ground itself could shake and crumble, survival required a different kind of ingenuity, one that prepared them for the unpredictable power of earthquakes. And as we'll see next, their strategies for surviving these tremors were just as remarkable. Earthquakes have always been one of the most unpredictable and destructive forces of nature, shaking the very ground beneath our feet. For ancient civilizations living in seismic zones, survival meant more than just enduring these tremors. It meant building structures that could withstand them. From the wooden temples of Japan to the marble columns of Greece, ancient engineers developed techniques that still inspire awe today. In Japan, where earthquakes are a frequent reality, the answer lay in flexibility. Traditional Japanese architecture, particularly in temples and homes, was designed to sway rather than break. The secret, wood. Unlike rigid stone or brick, wood has a natural elasticity that allows it to bend and absorb the energy of an earthquake. Temples like the Horyu-ji in Nara, built in the 7th century, are prime examples of this ingenuity. Their interlocking wooden beams and joints create a structure that can move with the Earth's vibrations rather than resisting them. This concept, known as yosuke, allowed these buildings to survive centuries of seismic activity, standing tall even as modern structures around them crumbled. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, the challenge of earthquakes was met with a different approach: stability. Greek architects designed their temples with wide, sturdy column bases to distribute the weight of the structure evenly. The Parthenon in Athens is a perfect example. Its massive columns, built with a slight inward tilt, create a sense of balance that helps the structure resist lateral movement during tremors. The Greeks also used a technique called entoses, subtly curving the columns to counteract optical illusions and enhance their structural integrity. These innovations weren't just about aesthetics, they were about survival, ensuring that their sacred spaces could endure the test of time and nature. But surviving earthquakes wasn't just about the buildings themselves. Ancient cultures also developed early warning systems, relying on their deep connection to the natural world. In places like China, where seismic activity was common, people observed changes in animal behavior, water levels, and even the Earth's magnetic field to predict tremors. While their methods may not have been as precise as modern seismographs, they were remarkably effective, giving communities precious moments to prepare. Yet the threat didn't end when the shaking stopped. For coastal communities, earthquakes often brought another danger: tsunamis. These towering waves, triggered by undersea tremors, could wipe out entire settlements in moments. And as we'll see next, ancient people didn't just fear tsunamis, they learned to anticipate them, developing strategies that saved countless lives. For coastal civilizations, tsunamis were a terrifying reality, a force of nature that could rise from the sea without warning, swallowing entire villages in moments. Yet, ancient people didn't just cower in fear, they adapted, finding ways to survive and even thrive in the shadow of these devastating waves. One of the most striking examples comes from the Polynesians, who lived on islands surrounded by the vast Pacific Ocean. Facing the constant threat of tsunamis, they built their homes on stilts, a simple yet brilliant solution. Elevated above the ground, these structures were designed to withstand the force of incoming waves, allowing water to pass harmlessly beneath them. But the stilts weren't just about protection. They also kept homes dry during regular flooding and storms, showcasing the Polynesians' deep understanding of their environment. Their elevated homes weren't just shelters, they were a testament to their ability to live in harmony with the ocean's power. Meanwhile, on the island of Crete, the Minoans faced a similar challenge. Known for their advanced seafaring culture, they couldn't afford to ignore the threat of tsunamis. Their solution, harbor walls, these massive stone barriers built along the coastline, were designed to absorb the impact of incoming waves, protecting the city of Knossos and its vital ports. The Minoans didn't just build these walls haphazardly. They positioned them strategically, using their knowledge of wave patterns and coastal geography to maximize their effectiveness. These walls weren't just defenses, they were symbols of resilience, standing as a testament to the Minoans' ingenuity and their determination to protect their way of life. But surviving tsunamis wasn't just about physical structures, it was also about preparation and community. Coastal cultures often passed down oral traditions and stories about past tsunamis, teaching younger generations what to look for, like sudden retreats of the ocean or unusual animal behavior, and how to respond. These stories weren't just lessons, they were lifelines, ensuring that knowledge survived even when the waves threatened to wash everything away. As we move from the unpredictable power of tsunamis to the relentless threat of wildfires, we see another example of how ancient people adapted to the forces of nature. Wildfires, while destructive, were also a natural part of many ecosystems, and ancient civilizations found ways to not only survive them but also use them to their advantage. Wildfires have always been a double-edged sword, both a destructive force and a vital part of many ecosystems. For ancient civilizations living in fire-prone regions, survival meant more than just escaping the flames. It meant learning to harness fire's power to protect their communities and sustain their way of life. In North America, Native Americans became masters of fire management. They understood that wildfires weren't just a threat, they were also a tool. By intentionally setting small, controlled burns, they cleared away dry brush and undergrowth, reducing the fuel available for larger, uncontrollable fires. These controlled burns weren't just about prevention, they also promoted the growth of fresh vegetation, which attracted game and made foraging easier. The practice was so effective that it shaped entire landscapes, creating open meadows and healthy forests that could thrive for generations. For Native Americans, fire wasn't an enemy, it was a partner, carefully managed to maintain balance and protect their way of life. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Aboriginal Australians were using fire in equally innovative ways. Their approach, known as fire stick farming, involved setting small, low-intensity fires to clear land and encourage the growth of new plants. These fires weren't just about survival, they were about renewal. By burning off old vegetation, they created spaces for nutrient-rich plants to flourish, which in turn supported the animals they hunted. This practice also had a profound impact on the landscape, shaping the Australian bush into a mosaic of grasslands and forests that could support diverse life. For Aboriginal Australians, fire was more than a tool. It was a way of life, deeply woven into their culture and traditions. What's remarkable about these strategies is how they reflect a deep understanding of the natural world. Ancient people didn't just react to wildfires, they worked with them, using fire to create environments that were not only safer but also more sustainable. Their ability to see fire as both a challenge and an opportunity speaks to their ingenuity and resilience. But fire wasn't the only extreme force ancient people had to contend with. In regions where the air turned frigid and the ground froze solid, survival required an entirely different set of skills. And as we'll see next, the strategies they developed to endure extreme cold were just as innovative, proving once again that human ingenuity knows no bounds. In the icy grip of the Arctic and the frostbitten landscapes of Scandinavia, ancient cultures faced a relentless adversary, extreme cold. Surviving in these freezing environments required more than just endurance. It demanded innovation, resourcefulness, and a deep understanding of the natural world. For the Inuit living in the Arctic's unforgiving cold, the key to survival lay in the very animals they hunted. They crafted clothing and shelters from animal skins, turning the raw materials of their environment into life-saving tools. Seal and caribou hides, with their dense fur and insulating properties, were meticulously sewn into layered garments. Parkas, mittens, and boots were designed not just to trap warmth but to repel moisture, ensuring that even in the harshest conditions, the Inuit could move freely and stay protected. Their clothing wasn't just functional, it was a masterpiece of design, tailored to their environment with precision and care. Meanwhile, in the snow-covered regions of Scandinavia, the Norse faced similar challenges. Their solution, the longhouse, these large communal structures were more than just homes, they were fortresses against the cold. Built from timber and insulated with turf or thatch, longhouses featured central fire pits that provided heat and light. The smoke from these fires escaped through a hole in the roof, keeping the interior warm without filling it with smoke. The longhouse wasn't just a shelter, it was a hub of community life where families gathered, stories were told, and bonds were strengthened. The Norse understood that survival in the cold wasn't just about physical protection. It was about creating spaces where people could thrive together, even in the harshest conditions. These ancient strategies for enduring extreme cold reveal a common theme: adaptability. Whether it was the Inuits' mastery of animal hides or the Norse's communal longhouses, these cultures found ways to turn their environment's challenges into opportunities for survival. But extreme cold wasn't the only natural force they had to contend with. In coastal regions, another threat loomed. One that brought not freezing temperatures but roaring winds and torrential rains. And as we'll see next, the strategies they developed to survive hurricanes and cyclones were just as remarkable, proving once again that human ingenuity can rise to meet even the most daunting challenges. For coastal civilizations, hurricanes and cyclones were a constant threat, a reminder of nature's raw power. Yet, rather than succumbing to fear, these communities developed innovative strategies to withstand the fury of these storms. Take the Caribbean islands, for example. Here, the indigenous Taino people crafted homes with thatched roofs made from palm leaves. These roofs weren't just simple coverings, they were engineering marvels. The tightly woven palm fronds allowed wind to pass through, reducing the risk of the roof being torn off during a storm. At the same time, the steep angle of the thatching helped rain slide off quickly, preventing water from pooling and causing leaks. This design wasn't just functional, it was a perfect example of how ancient people worked with their environment, using local materials to create structures that could endure even the fiercest winds. Meanwhile, in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean, the Polynesians faced cyclones with a different kind of ingenuity. Their outrigger canoes, iconic symbols of their seafaring culture, became essential tools for survival during storms. These canoes, with their stabilizing outriggers, were designed to handle rough seas and strong winds. When a cyclone approached, Polynesian communities would use these vessels to move to safer islands or sheltered lagoons. The outriggers provided stability, preventing the canoe from capsizing even in turbulent waters. Beyond their practical use, these canoes also symbolized the Polynesians' deep connection to the ocean, a relationship built on respect, adaptability, and an unshakable determination to survive. What's remarkable about these strategies is how they reflect a broader truth. Ancient civilizations didn't just endure natural disasters, they anticipated them. By understanding the patterns of their environment and developing tools to navigate its challenges, they turned potential catastrophes into opportunities for growth. The Caribbean's thatched roofs and the Polynesians' outrigger canoes weren't just survival tools, they were testaments to human ingenuity and resilience. But storms weren't the only challenges ancient people faced. When disaster struck in the form of disease, entire communities were pushed to their limits. Plagues and pandemics posed a different kind of threat, one that couldn't be seen or predicted. And as we'll see next, their strategies for surviving these invisible enemies were just as innovative, proving once again that human creativity knows no bounds. When disease swept through ancient civilizations, it was a silent, invisible enemy, one that could decimate entire populations without warning. Without the benefit of modern medicine, ancient people had to rely on ingenuity and careful observation to combat these deadly outbreaks. The Romans, for instance, were among the first to implement formal quarantine measures. When outbreaks of illnesses like smallpox or the plague occurred, they would isolate the sick in designated areas outside the city walls. These spaces, known as valetudinaria, served as early hospitals where the infected could be cared for while minimizing the risk of spreading disease to the healthy population. The Romans understood that containment was key, and their proactive approach to isolation laid the groundwork for modern public health practices. Meanwhile, in ancient China, the response to pandemics combined practical measures with traditional wisdom. Herbal medicine played a central role in their approach, with healers using plants like ginseng, ginger, and licorice root to treat symptoms and boost immunity. These remedies, rooted in centuries of observation and experimentation, were often accompanied by strict isolation protocols. During outbreaks, entire villages would close their gates, restricting movement in and out to prevent the spread of disease. This blend of herbal medicine and isolation wasn't just about treating the sick, it was about protecting the community as a whole. But surviving pandemics wasn't just about immediate responses, it was also about preserving knowledge for the future. Ancient civilizations understood that the lessons learned during one outbreak could save lives during the next. In China, medical texts like the Huangdi Nijing documented treatments and preventive measures, ensuring that future generations could build on this knowledge. Similarly, Roman physicians like Galen recorded their observations of diseases and their treatments, creating a foundation for Western medicine. These records weren't just academic exercises, they were survival manuals written with the hope that their insights would outlast the ravages of time. What's striking about these strategies is how they reveal a universal truth. Ancient people didn't just endure pandemics, they learned from them. By combining practical measures with the preservation of knowledge, they created a legacy of resilience that continues to inspire us today. And as we turn to the next chapter of their story, we'll see how this same spirit of innovation and adaptability helped them survive another relentless force, famine. When crops failed and food supplies dwindled, ancient civilizations faced one of the most devastating challenges of all. Yet, even in the face of starvation, they found ways to endure. proving once again that human ingenuity can rise to meet even the most daunting of trials. When disaster struck, ancient civilizations didn't just survive. They documented their experiences, ensuring their hard-earned knowledge would endure for generations. This wasn't just about passing down stories. It was about creating a living archive of survival strategies, a gift to the future. Among the most meticulous record keepers were the ancient Egyptians. Along the banks of the Nile, where floods could mean the difference between abundance and famine, they carved detailed records into temple walls. These inscriptions weren't mere decorations, they were practical guides. By documenting flood patterns, crop yields, and weather cycles, the Egyptians created a reference library for future farmers and leaders. When the Nile rose too high or too low, they could look to these records for guidance, ensuring their communities were prepared for whatever nature threw their way. Halfway across the world, the Maya were also preserving knowledge, but in a different form, codices. These intricate books, made from bark paper and folded like an accordion, contain detailed observations of celestial events, weather patterns, and agricultural cycles. The Maya understood that the movements of the stars and planets weren't just mystical, they were practical tools for predicting seasons and planning harvests. By tracking these patterns, they could anticipate droughts, floods, and other challenges, ensuring their communities thrived even in the face of uncertainty. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving examples, is a testament to their scientific ingenuity, filled with precise calculations and illustrations that reveal their deep understanding of the cosmos. What's truly remarkable about these ancient records is how they reflect a universal human impulse, the desire to learn from the past. By preserving their knowledge, these civilizations weren't just protecting their own survival, they were laying the groundwork for future generations to build upon. The Egyptians' flood records and the Maya's celestial charts weren't just about immediate survival. They were about creating a legacy of resilience. And this legacy isn't just a relic of the past, it's a source of inspiration for modern solutions. Today, scientists and engineers are turning to ancient wisdom to tackle contemporary challenges. From using traditional water management techniques to combat droughts to studying ancient building methods for earthquake-resistant structures, we're rediscovering the value of these time-tested strategies. The lessons of the past remind us that survival isn't just about reacting to disaster, it's about preparing for it, learning from it, and passing that knowledge on to those who will come after us. As we reflect on these ancient practices, it's worth considering how their methods can guide us in a world increasingly shaped by climate change and natural disasters. The next chapter of their story takes us into the realm of adaptation, where ancient civilizations didn't just endure, they evolved, finding new ways to thrive in an ever-changing world. Ancient survival strategies aren't just relics of the past, they are blueprints for the future. Today, as we face increasingly frequent natural disasters, modern architects and scientists are turning to these time-tested methods for inspiration. Take the Inca, for example. Their earthquake-resistant masonry, built without mortar, has become a model for modern engineers. By studying how the Incas' interlocking stones allowed structures to sway and absorb seismic energy, architects are now incorporating similar techniques into contemporary buildings. These designs, known as base isolation systems, use flexible materials and joints to mimic the Incas' genius, creating skyscrapers and bridges that can withstand even the most powerful tremors. It's a perfect example of how ancient wisdom is shaping the future of disaster resilience. But it's not just about earthquakes. In the face of worsening wildfires, indigenous fire management techniques are proving to be lifesavers. For centuries, Native American and Aboriginal Australian communities used controlled burns to clear dry brush and prevent catastrophic fires. Today, this ancient practice is being revived in places like California and Australia, where modern firefighters are adopting these methods to reduce the risk of uncontrollable blazes. By reintroducing small, intentional fires, they're not only protecting communities but also restoring ecosystems that have been disrupted by decades of fire suppression. This blend of traditional knowledge and modern science is a powerful reminder that sometimes the best solutions are rooted in the past. Yet, as we look to these ancient strategies for guidance, we must also consider the ethical implications of adopting them. Many of these practices are deeply tied to the cultures and identities of the people who developed them. How do we ensure that this knowledge is used respectfully and equitably? For example, when indigenous fire management techniques are adopted, are the communities who originated them being recognized and compensated for their contributions? These questions challenge us to think critically about how we integrate ancient wisdom into modern life, ensuring that we honor the cultures that preserved this knowledge for generations. As we explore these lessons, it's clear that ancient survival strategies aren't just about the mechanics of resilience, they're about the values that underpin it: respect for nature, community cooperation, and the willingness to learn from the past. And as we move into the next chapter of this story, we'll see how these values continue to shape our understanding of disaster preparedness in a rapidly changing world. As we explore the incredible ingenuity of ancient survival strategies, it's essential to pause and ask, how do we honor and integrate these practices in a way that respects their origins? The effectiveness of these methods is undeniable, but their adoption in the modern world comes with a responsibility, one that goes beyond simply borrowing ideas. It's about recognizing the cultures that developed these techniques and ensuring their wisdom is treated with the respect it deserves. Take, for example, the indigenous fire management practices of Native Americans and Aboriginal Australians. These methods, refined over thousands of years, are now being adopted to combat modern wildfires. But here's the critical question: are the communities who created these practices being acknowledged and included in the conversation? Often, the answer is no. Too frequently, indigenous knowledge is taken without proper credit or compensation, stripping it of its cultural context and reducing it to a mere tool. This isn't just unfair, it's a missed opportunity to learn from the very people who have preserved this wisdom for generations. Respecting indigenous knowledge means more than just using it. It means engaging with the communities who hold it, listening to their perspectives, and ensuring they benefit from its application in the modern world. At the same time, the integration of ancient practices with modern technology offers a powerful way to address today's challenges. Consider the Inca's earthquake-resistant architecture. Engineers today are studying their stonework to design buildings that can withstand seismic activity, blending ancient techniques with cutting-edge materials and construction methods. This fusion of old and new doesn't just enhance resilience, it creates a dialogue between the past and the present, showing how timeless wisdom can inform innovative solutions. But this collaboration must be rooted in mutual respect. When we adopt ancient strategies, we're not just borrowing techniques, we're engaging with a living legacy. The people who developed these methods were not just survivors, they were innovators, scientists, and storytellers. Their knowledge is a testament to human creativity and adaptability, and it deserves to be treated as such. As we look to the future, the enduring relevance of these ancient strategies becomes clear. They remind us that survival isn't just about technology or resources, it's about ingenuity, community, and respect for the natural world. By honoring the wisdom of the past and integrating it thoughtfully into our modern lives, we can build a more resilient and equitable future. This brings us to the heart of what these ancient practices teach us. Resilience isn't just about enduring disasters, it's about learning from them, adapting to them, and creating systems that allow us to thrive in the face of uncertainty. Whether it's the Inca's earthquake-resistant stones, the Polynesians' outrigger canoes, or the Native Americans' controlled burns, these strategies are more than just survival tools. They're lessons in how to live in harmony with the world around us. As we conclude this exploration, one thing is clear. The challenges we face today may be different, but the principles of resilience remain the same. By looking to the past, we can find not only practical solutions, but also a deeper understanding of what it means to survive and thrive in an unpredictable world. The lessons of ancient civilizations are not just relics of history. They are timeless guides offering wisdom that is as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. As our world grapples with the escalating impacts of climate change, the survival strategies of ancient civilizations take on a new urgency. Rising sea levels, intensifying storms, prolonged droughts, and unpredictable weather patterns are no longer distant threats, they are our reality. And in this rapidly changing landscape, the wisdom of the past offers more than just historical insight. It provides a roadmap for resilience. Ancient people thrived in harsh environments, not by dominating nature, but by learning to adapt to its rhythms. Their ability to observe, innovate, and collaborate offers lessons that are more relevant today than ever before. One of the most striking examples of this enduring relevance lies in water management. Just as the Nabateans carved cisterns into desert rock to capture rainwater, modern communities facing water scarcity are rediscovering the value of ancient techniques. In places like India, traditional stepwells are being restored to combat drought, while cities around the world are adopting rainwater harvesting systems inspired by these age-old methods. The lesson is clear: sustainability isn't a new concept, it's a practice rooted in centuries of human ingenuity. But the challenges we face today are global, and so must be our solutions. Climate change knows no borders, and neither should our efforts to combat it. Just as ancient civilizations shared knowledge through oral traditions and written records, we must foster a culture of global cooperation and knowledge sharing. Indigenous communities, for instance, hold invaluable insights into fire management, agriculture, and ecosystem restoration knowledge that can help us mitigate the effects of climate change. By working together, we can create a mosaic of strategies that draw from the best of both ancient and modern wisdom. What makes these ancient techniques so powerful is their adaptability. They were designed not for a single, unchanging environment, but for a world of uncertainty, a world much like our own. Whether it's the earthquake-resistant architecture of the Inca or the flood management systems of the Egyptians, these strategies were born out of necessity and refined through trial and error. They remind us that resilience isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to learn, adapt, and innovate in the face of challenges. As we look to the future, the lessons of the past offer both hope and a call to action. They remind us that survival isn't just about technology or resources, it's about community, foresight, and respect for the natural world. By embracing the wisdom of ancient civilizations, we can build a more sustainable and resilient future, one that honors the ingenuity of those who came before us. The journey through these ancient survival strategies has revealed a profound truth. The challenges we face today are not insurmountable. They are, in many ways, echoes of the trials ancient people overcame. And just as they found ways to thrive, so too can we, if we are willing to listen, learn, and act. This isn't just a story about survival. It's a story about the enduring power of human creativity and cooperation, a story that continues to unfold with each passing generation. The resilience and ingenuity of ancient civilizations in the face of natural disasters is nothing short of extraordinary. From the earthquake-resistant temples of Japan to the flood control systems of ancient China, these cultures didn't just survive, they thrived, turning adversity into opportunity. Their ability to observe, adapt, and innovate offers us more than just historical fascination. It provides a blueprint for resilience in our own time. What's truly remarkable is how these ancient strategies were rooted in a deep respect for the natural world. They didn't try to conquer nature, they worked with it, using its rhythms and resources to their advantage. Whether it was the Incas' flexible stonework or the Polynesians' mastery of the ocean, their solutions were born from a profound understanding of their environment. This balance between practicality and harmony is something we can all learn from, especially as we face the growing challenges of climate change and environmental instability. But the lessons of the past aren't just about survival, they're about connection. Ancient people understood that resilience wasn't just an individual effort, it was a collective one. Communities came together to build, to prepare, and to support one another. This spirit of cooperation, of shared knowledge and shared purpose, is perhaps the most vital takeaway of all. In a world that often feels divided, their example reminds us of the power of unity in the face of adversity. As we look to the future, the wisdom of ancient civilizations offers more than just practical solutions, it offers hope. It shows us that even in the most challenging circumstances, human creativity and determination can prevail. Whether it's reviving indigenous fire management techniques or designing earthquake-resistant buildings inspired by the Inca, we have the opportunity to blend ancient wisdom with modern innovation to create a more resilient world. So, what can you do with these lessons? Start by observing the world around you, just as ancient people did. Look for ways to adapt, to innovate, and to work together. Whether it's preparing for emergencies, supporting your community, or simply learning more about the incredible strategies of the past, every step you take builds resilience, not just for yourself, but for those around you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What lessons from ancient survival strategies resonate with you? How do you think we can apply these ideas to today's challenges? Share your insights in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of history. Together, let's explore the past to build a brighter, more resilient future.